Hi, I'm Ian.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast where we bring you the actual ghost stories
With the actual history.
in the actual place. On this episode of Ghosts and Bears, we're going back to school. Well, kind of. We're going back to a university campus, and we're going to talk about the Young Building, one of the oldest large buildings in Victoria, and most certainly one of the most haunted, on this upcoming episode of Ghosts and Bears. Well, how you doing, Jason?
Oh, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Are you well?
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty good. Busy as usual.
Busy as usual. We've been selling the cars, rustling up funds, trying to get everything together for ourselves.
Yeah.
You've done a great job, though.
Yeah, I did pretty good this last week.
And you've also been able to find some cars for that dealership you've been working part-time for.
Yeah, it's a little bit of fun.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
spending other people's money. So it's fun.
Well, and they're happy because they're getting cars for their dealerships, so it's all good.
Yeah, it was good. It's good.
Yeah. I have been. I went through a sad thing this week.
Oh, yeah.
With the baby quails. 7 of them hatched of the 10 eggs. Turns out only 7 eggs were fertilized, so that's actually really good news because it means
It is good.
every egg hatched, and I was not expecting that at all. The downside was one of the babies had something called splay legs.
Poor thing.
Do you know this? Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It was struggling.
Oh, it had to drag itself around by its wings, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I could make a tiny little bird wheelchair or something, or give it its own little home. But I was watching the quail cam when I was out, the quail cam you set up for me in the brooder,
Yes.
and the other birds had started pecking him.
Yeah. Which isn't fair to it.
No, it wasn't going to work. So I tried. I did actually do this old method where you put them in a glass with Kleenex and you get them to stand up and stuff. But it worked for one leg, but the other leg was like up over its head, and it was just never going to work. So I made him very comfortable, and I gave him a snack, and then I said sorry, and then I euthanized him in a kind, cruelty-free way, and he is now returned to the great energy in the sky. But it was really hard. I've never actually had to do that before. I've raised chicks before, but I've never had to put any of them down. I actually have had issues with them, but I managed to save the little fluffy butts.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was sad.
It was really sad. I felt really awful. But on the flip side, the other 6 are growing all their feathers.
Yeah.
And the original 4 are flapping around like crazy critters. So I think we're
So if you
doing
need any little fuzzy butts, just reach out.
If you're in the market for button quail, you know where to go.
We have a few ready to go.
Well, not quite ready to go. They still need heat, but. And then we bought them a summer home.
Yeah. Little excursion thing for outside.
Yeah.
It's very cute. A little cedar hut.
A little cedar hut, and it was on Used Victoria or something, and I was able to snag that for a good price. I'm calling it, ready? Quail's Landing. And if I'm feeling extra creative, maybe we could do a whole soap opera around it. Like,
Yeah, sure.
What was that show?
Camo.
Was it Knots Landing? Wasn't that one of the, back in the 80s? Wasn't there? Like, it was like Dallas or one of those nighttime soap operas, like Dynasty or something. I'm sure there's one called Knots Landing or Falcon's Landing or some crap like that. Anyway, Quail's Landing will be the new and exciting place to be this summer, so I have to stop by and say hi. Speaking of stopping by and saying hi, I'm pretty excited to hang out with a couple of our listeners next week.
Yeah, that's right.
Kyle and Charlotte are coming.
Yes.
My mom will be here, so we'll be hauling around the old lady, and she doesn't listen to this, so I can say that. And we're going to hit up some of the most haunted spots. We're going to go to Fisgard Lighthouse, Fort Rod Hill, and a place that I haven't been to for a long, long time, Craig Darrett Castle. So I'm excited about that, because when was the last time you were at Craig Darrett Castle?
Never.
Yeah, see? So it's going to be amazing. I'm super excited.
Yeah. I've been there lots. I just haven't toured it.
No, I mean, I've driven past it. I was in there I think when I was writing the first book, I went for a tour just to make sure, I had all my facts straight and get that sort of spiritual sense I like to do. But I haven't been there it's been a really long time. And that's the thing. I always believe when you move to a new city, you should do all the touristy things in the first year. Because if you don't, you never will.
That's fair. That's fair. I didn't do the touristy things.
No. Well, you were busy.
But we have a fact checker, Dick from UVic.
Oh, stop. Poor Dick. It's not even his name. His name's Richard. Well, come on.
That's okay.
I mean, I guess nicknames come from the way we behave. So...
That's right. Maybe. I don't know.
Just a theory.
Yeah.
We are talking about the Young Building on this episode. This was a crazy, crazy chapter of Victoria's Most Haunted that came out in 2016. And you have been there as well.
Yeah, I was taking business law and some other accounting courses.
So tell us about your experiences there, and then I'll talk about mine.
Well... the time I was taking night courses, I always found the Young Building, the presence was heavy. That's probably the only way I can describe it. It was not my favorite building of any of them, especially at night.
It changed at night.
Yeah,
100%.
It was either... must have been winter semester that I was there, because there isn't much daylight.
No.
And there was not much. If you know the geographical location of Victoria, the sun in the winter usually is pretty much gone by 4:30.
4:30, 5 o'clock in there. Yeah.
By the time you actually go to your courses,
it's dark.
It's dark.
It's true.
And
dark.
It's raining, and it's miserable, and it's a long hike from a car.
Yes.
To the Young Building.
Yes, and they seem to have all the night courses in the Young Building.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I was... can't remember if it was the second or third floor, but anyways, the auditorium was almost across from us. I remember taking a business ethics course there in business law. And any time I walked by that auditorium, I could see the piano vaguely.
Big grand piano in there.
In the distance on the stage. And there's a couple times I heard it do the
tinkling thing.
Yeah, the high notes.
Yeah, the high notes, and you're not the only person to say that. Upper 2 octaves, I would say, and it was like, I don't want to sound cliche that it's some horror film, but there was a little bit of that, and I beelined it out of that. That was enough.
When our courses were done at 8:30 to 9, I just beelined it out of there. I didn't want to hang around to... it's not that I'm a wimp, but I'm not going to provoke something that...
Oh, no, not at all. And it's funny because other people have said the exact same thing about the piano. Interestingly enough, you may remember the name Ed Sum, who I actually did talk to for the Victoria's Most Haunted book, and I had talked to him before. Yeah. He's also the guy who helped me second episode of this podcast.
That's right.
Remember, he got in touch and he's like, I think I know how you can sound better. And I'm like, well, dude, anything is going to make that happen. So
very useful resource.
Yeah, he's been amazing
in creating a much better sound.
But he was one of the first people who talked to me about the Young Building, and I had no idea what a snowball it was.
Yeah, and it's not like... I don't know. It's if anyone's experienced it, you've experienced it. Some people are just like, oh, someone's messing around on stage. But I poked my head in through one of the doors because there's, well, if I remember right, this is going back 8-9 years.
Yeah.
There's like 2 or 3 sets of doors to enter this area, and I remember going in and I'm like, there is no one on stage. Okay, bye.
Yeah, exactly.
There's kind of folding doors that you have to walk through in the hall, and I just beelined it through those. Bye. Not hanging around to figure out what's going on in there. Just
exactly.
Goodbye. But the energy in that hall was heavy.
Well, and it's interesting because I'll talk about this once I'm done kind of the history of it all, but the building was built in 1914. Mm-hmm. They built it as a normal school. And at first I'm like, a normal school? What does that mean? Like for normal people? Because I don't know who would go there. But the normal school was the term they used to describe a school that was built for teachers, to basically teach teachers how to be teachers. And that's what it was. It was part of a 7.5 acre plot, which of course belonged to the Hudson's Bay Company because they owned everything. And then it became part of the Lansdowne campus, the larger school for Camosun. At the time, the school had about 275 people in it. During the Second World War, the young building was turned into a military hospital.
Didn't it have a morgue in it?
Yeah, unfortunately, not everyone survived in the military hospital. And the morgue is in the basement. I talk about that in the story time too. The morgue was definitely there.
That would probably explain why I never liked hanging around that building.
Yes. Well, there's a whole lot going on here, and I actually do talk about that in story time too. But we can talk about that right afterwards and give our own ideas because I definitely have some. In 1946, the building was returned to its original function as an educational institution, and it was shared between the Normal School and Victoria College, which in 1956 became one. Then they decided that the new site for this was going to be the Gordon Head campus, which is now University of Victoria. And the young building was then used as the Institute of Adult Studies, which was located in what is currently the Ewing building. But at the time, they were offering these courses. And it was the first center in Canada in 1967 to offer daytime courses for adults who wanted to upgrade their high school education. So that's really what made it unique. Local interest in the community college grew, and in 1970, they did turn it into Camosun College. And they also opened up another one, the BC Vocational School, which we would now know as the Interurban Campus, and that's more for hands-on trades and also their computer programs and that kind of thing.
That's where my accounting courses
were.
Right,
yeah.
For business.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the time I lived off Richardson, which is more downtown, so
much closer to this one.
Enough, I did like taking my courses at Lansdowne.
Yeah. And so, it became Camosun, and it's been pretty cool. It's quite a large institution here in Victoria. It's a great way if you want to go to university and get your university degree, but you don't want to pay your first 2 years of university tuition. You can actually go to Camosun and take a bunch of transfer courses for cheaper, and then finish off your degree at UVic, which a lot of people do. I remember
you can do your entire bachelor's now at Camosun.
You can now, It's funny because back in the day, I remember someone saying to me, "Well, who cares where you started school? It's where you graduated from that counts." I'm like, yeah, that's a really good point. So that's kind of the background of this building. It has a clock tower, as it was almost mandatory to do. It's built on a very high ridge. It's on solid rock. It's part of Mount Ptolemy, really. It's sort of the base of Mount Ptolemy. And it's built on solid rock. And that seems to have, some people think that has some real impact on its kind of energy and its spiritual energy. So what I thought we'd do is we'd listen to the story time. We get into that, and then afterwards, you and I can talk about some of the theories about what's going on there, and I can tell you about my experiences there.
Yeah, that's exciting.
All right,
Looking forward to it.
Everyone, enjoy the story time. We will be back on the other side, and we'll have some more conversations about the Young Building.
Stay tuned.
The Young Building. This is an interesting story, and one of the really cool ones I got from the last book, Victoria's Most Haunted, when I was able to talk to a whole bunch of people. The Young Building, which is part of the Lansdowne campus of Camosun College, outside of downtown, has, like many other buildings of Victoria, had a varied life. It opened in 1914 as the Victoria Normal School, an old-fashioned term for a teacher's college, the first of its kind in town.
In the 1940s, it was turned into a military hospital, complete with an operating theater and a morgue. After the war was over, it reverted back to being a school and included a new institution called Victoria College, which shared the building, and in 1971 became the first building of the newly created Camosun College, which has now grown up all around it. There have long been multiple stories about the Young Building that involve strange goings-on. Student instructors and even security staff and custodians, the standard and most reliable sources of ghost stories for large public buildings, have reported these happenings. Interestingly, when I was promoting the book, I was going on quite a few local radio stations, and a lot of those DJs had been in the Camosun College radio diploma program, broadcasting. And this program was based out of the Young Building. And so not only on air were they excited to hear the stories, they were also really excited to share their own stories, and often said, the only weird paranormal thing that has ever happened to me ever was in the Young Building. And then they'll tell me their story. So it's pretty cool how they have all these different stories going on. When I first moved to Victoria, I took a few evening classes in the Young Building. I hadn't heard anything about the building, but I know what I felt. My classes were on the 3rd floor, and while I didn't enjoy climbing those stairs at 6 p.m., I dreaded going down them even more at 9 p.m. Going up the stairs felt like moving through a mist or a fog, but it felt even more threatening a few hours later when I had to leave. I actually forgot about those sensations over the years, but when I returned to the Young Building as part of my research for Victoria's Most Haunted, I experienced the same feelings again all these years later. I expected that the bottom floor would be the most active, and indeed there is activity there, but for the most part, the 3rd floor holds the most active energy and the most troublesome, or helpful, depending on their moods, I suppose, spirits. Our first story comes from a security guard named Christine Crawley. Christine worked at the Young Building for 15 years. She's not a woman prone to flights of fancy. Her matter-of-fact demeanor backs that up. While Christine was happy to share her experience, she was very quick to point out that while strange things happen, most can be explained. Some, however, cannot. There was more than one time when Christine felt uncomfortable at the college, and there are certain areas where she didn't linger, places that she would do her required check-ins and exit quickly. One time while guarding the building, she heard voices and thumping in the elevator. Thinking quickly, she called the elevator down to where she was and stepped back, expecting to deal with at least a couple of people who had no business being in the building. As the elevator came closer, the voices and thumping grew louder, almost as if people were fighting in there. Christine prepared herself, and right up until the moment of the elevator doors opening, the noises continued to just get louder. The second the doors parted, the elevator fell silent, because it was completely empty. Christine could not explain that one. One experience in particular forced Christine to be a little more open-minded about paranormal activities. It happened while she was training a new security guard. The young woman was very interested in seeing the roof and the clock tower on the Young Building. Christine wasn't thrilled about going up there, as she knew it was under construction, and the handrails had been taken down, but the young guard was so excited about seeing it that Christine agreed to take her up, giving her many, many warnings and reminders to be extra careful and cautious as they ascended the ladder to the tower. Christine went first and climbed to the roof. As she took her first step, she felt her foot slip, and she began to fall forward, right off the roof. Just as she was about to tumble off, she felt a hand grab her jacket and pull her back from falling headfirst down the roof. As she stood panting, she turned to thank the young guard, assuming it was she who had steadied her. But when she looked back, she realized that the other woman was still on the ladder and hadn't actually made it out of the roof hatch yet. Severely spooked, Christine told the young woman they were going right back down. But as she descended the ladder, Christine turned back and said to the air over the roof, "Thanks, Casper," before she closed the hatch behind her. At the best of times, Christine had an uncomfortable relationship with the unseen residents in the Young Building, but she had to admit that at least once they definitely did more good than harm. Lisa, an instructor who's been at the college for over 15 years, told me one of the most unique stories I've ever heard. It was early in the morning as she was just coming into her office. Nothing seemed amiss or creepy. It was a regular winter morning, so it was still dark outside at that hour. As she walked down the hall, she saw her friend, who also worked in the building, in the reflection of the glass doors at the end of the hall behind her. He was creeping comically up behind her with his arms up and lifting his legs melodramatically like a vampire in a silent movie. Lisa laughed and stopped. She put her hands on her hips and she said, "I can totally see you." As she stood there waiting for him to catch up, she didn't turn around. She just kept watching his reflection, still laughing. He was just about to reach her when, as Lisa described, it was like he was a watercolor painting and someone had just poured a glass of water on him. He just melted right there behind me. Of course, when this happened, she spun around to see, but no one was there. She spun back around to the reflection. There was nothing there either. Nothing like that ever happened again, but it troubled her. How did whatever was in the hall with her mimic her friend? Was it being funny to make her laugh? Or was it a deliberate attempt to fool her into lowering her guard? Ed Sum was a student at the college in 2008. He was in the broadcasting program. Ed had always been interested in ghosts and the paranormal. Soon after starting at Camosun, he began hearing stories about the Young Building. While Ed believed in ghosts, he focuses on proof of their existence, not feelings or hunches. He wants to see and hear things, and even more importantly, he wants to record the experience. He was working as a reporter for the Camosun newspaper at the time, and got permission to investigate the tales he'd heard about the building with a paranormal group he was part of. Some said that the third floor was very unsettled, particularly the bathrooms, but other parts of the building were unsettled too. In the old auditorium, the piano could be heard playing on its own quite often. The changing room on the bottom floor was originally used as the morgue, and several people had mentioned feeling uncomfortable down there. When Ed brought in the paranormal investigators, they experienced a number of interesting occurrences. One of the most irrefutable pieces of evidence they gathered was a recording. Investigative groups use voice recorders in an attempt to catch electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs. These occur because spirit voices seem to be able to be caught on voice recorders rather than by human ears. One of the investigators asked the room, "What time is it?" When they played the tape back later to review for possible evidence, the answer was there. But it wasn't a voice that belonged to the investigators. 11, it said. The time had been exactly 11 p.m. The EVP was definitely not a one-of. When the Camosun College radio station was on air, they often had difficulty recording announcements and commercials. The recordings would be repeatedly polluted with voices, whispering, and chattering. These background voices were definitely audible, but no one could tell what they were saying. The same problem happened when people attempted to do voiceovers for student video projects. Repeated takes had to be made as mysterious voices kept showing up on the recordings. It wasn't just voices that made themselves known. The photography students talked about one of the dark rooms and the way it was set up, with stations where each student could do their work. There was always one station where the focusing magnifier would go missing. The poor student would then go in search of it, and when the student finally gave up in the search and returned to their station, the missing piece of equipment would always be there waiting for them. Linda, an instructor at Camosun, told me one of the most chilling stories I've heard about the Young Building. Linda had taught at the college for more than 10 years and had spent a lot of time in the Young Building. A self-professed skeptic, Linda wasn't in a hurry to talk about her experience, but she was also aware that it was undeniable, and she had no explanation for what had happened. Linda was working late one night and needed to print a document. Unfortunately for her, the printer on her floor was not working, and she had to send the print job up to a printer on the third floor, which was situated in an alcove that led to 4 locked office doors. It was around 9 p.m. and dark inside and out. If you've ever been in the Young Building, you know it's quite a dark building at the best of times, but it was certainly darker that night as Linda climbed the stairs to the third floor. She walked through the doors to the third floor, turned left, and made her way to the printer. It was quiet up there, and Linda knew she was the only one on that floor, if not the whole building. When she got to the alcove, she noticed her document wasn't completely done printing, so she stood waiting, facing the printer with her back to the hallway. At that moment, she felt someone breathing on the back of her neck. At the time, she had long hair, so someone would have had to have been quite close for her to feel their breath on her neck. Linda turned on her heel to find she was still completely alone. As it was cold outside, no windows were open and the hallways were heated only with radiators. There was no other source of airflow. Linda gathered her papers and went straight back to her office, where she collected her things and left for the night, distinctly unsettled and less skeptical than she'd been. And then there was Alan, who was 23 when he took a job as a security guard at Camosun, a job he kept for only 1 year. On the night he quit that job, he responded to a triggered alarm at the Young Building. Something had set off the motion sensors. This happened quite often as the Young Building had a very high incidence of triggered alarms. Alan hated this part of the job. Just after 3 a.m., he went to the school and started his rounds on the 3rd floor, making his way down to the basement, without finding anyone else in the building. As he began to walk along the hallway of the basement area, he suddenly knew he wasn't alone. He felt a very strong presence. "I'm not here to harm you. I just need to check the building," he called out. At that moment, the lights began to turn off one by one, starting at the far wall and coming toward him. It was a defining moment. Alan turned, walked out of the building, and vowed to never come back. There's also the story that a longtime custodian Norm told me. He was on the 3rd floor one evening in the middle of the night, attempting the long and arduous task of buffing the floors in the main hallway. As he went about his task, he didn't notice anything unusual. Norm was used to the eccentricities of the building and wasn't fazed by much. That is until all the doors lining the hallway closed at the same time. He took that as a sign and went to go find something else to do on another floor for the rest of the evening. Before I began collecting these stories, I wanted the building to see what I might sense. I expected the basement where the morgue had been to be the most unsettled, but it wasn't. The 3rd floor definitely has the basement beat. From what I could tell, the spirits in the building, of which there are certainly more than a couple, are generally pretty happy. They enjoy the vibe that's there during the day and don't mind having some young, fresh energy around them, as it's most likely that these are leftover spirits from the time when the building was a military hospital, so it makes some sense. Young soldiers make for young ghosts. However, nighttime is when the college is truly their domain. While they will put up with people being around, custodians, instructors, security guards, and the like, there's a much higher chance that the spirits will make themselves known after dark. A great example of this is the number of false hits this building gets on its motion sensors. Guards are continually summoned to find nothing amiss, but with an alarm to reset nonetheless. The spirits that have remained in the Young Building are not looking for trouble, or even, from what I could tell, to move on to the next realm. They're simply carrying on with what they've always done. And if I had to guess, I would say they'll keep doing so for quite a while longer.
And welcome back.
Yes, welcome back.
Are those not wild stories?
Yeah, I would say so.
When I sat down, I remember sitting down with Christine, the security guard, who almost fell off the roof. A very practical woman, very no nonsense. You could tell she did not have time for foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
She has worked in the Young Building as one of her places that she had to patrol for almost 20 years. And she said it's always been weird, but that was her most profound experience.
No kidding.
But she's always heard noises. Like, I'm in the story time, I mentioned how the motion sensors go off all the time, like sometimes a couple times a night. And she said she'd go in there and she would hear people, young men laughing, giggling. And then she'd be like, oh, great, someone's in here. But there was never, ever anybody in there.
Oh, no.
She'd hear footsteps up ahead. She'd hear someone climbing the stairs ahead of her. She would assume that someone was in the building and they never were. So yeah, she was really cool to talk to. And then that other story that I said about the professor seeing her friend creeping up on her.
Yeah, no, that's
wild. Never, ever heard of anything like that.
Come to think of it, I thought I saw, this is 9 years ago, when I was walking towards one of those doors.
Right.
I swear I saw something in the reflection of the window that's in that door.
Yeah, because all the doors are see-through. They all have glass in them. Yeah.
Yeah, behind me.
And you turned around?
No, I just kept walking. Because I knew it was not a corporeal form like us.
You knew something was off.
It was opaque.
Wow.
But it was moving, and I'm like, yep, nope, not hanging around. Goodbye. Just zoom through.
I'm not surprised. I was taking courses there, as I mentioned in Storytime, way back when I first got to Victoria. So this would be 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And they were at night as well, and they were in the Young Building. It was for a counseling certificate, counseling certification. And our classes were up on the third floor. Now, interestingly, the morgue was based in the basement, but the most stories I would hear from people were on the third floor.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I remember climbing those stairs at, say, 6:30-ish, because our class went from 7 until 9:30, or 6:30 to 9:30. I'd be climbing those stairs around 6 o'clock, and it was dark. It was winter time, like you had said, and there was a certain feeling in the building.
Yeah.
And then when you would leave at 9:30, I would practically run down those stairs.
Bolt out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do pretty much bolt.
And I knew none of the stories. I knew none of the history. It was just a very clear feeling of, oh, you're still here? Like, this is our time now.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. That is it exactly. It just felt like you're almost being pushed out of the building, like, get out.
Well, like you're trespassing.
Yes.
Is what it felt like.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I beelined it out of there after my courses.
So,
Wouldn't hang around at all.
and I mentioned this in story time, but I am more convinced of this than ever. I think when it was a military hospital, you've got young men, probably early 20s, who are in that hospital. They're there to get better. They're expecting to get better. But not all of them did.
No.
A lot of them would succumb to
Or
infections.
hopeful to get better. I guess.
Sure, of course, and could go rather quickly. I think at least 2 of them ended up getting stuck without even really realizing they're dead. I never felt like I was in trouble or in danger, but I definitely felt like I was in someone else's home.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Would you agree with that? Like, it wasn't
You
a
definitely
threatening.
felt like you were trespassing a bit.
Yeah, and so I think, and given the nature of the stories, I think what these guys loved more than anything was to play pranks. And
That's fair. Yep, that makes sense.
and to make people uncomfortable. And
Yeah, when I was in
to,
Sea Cadets, there were a lot of pranksters, and the activity was always at night. The prank,
right, we
pranksters.
talked about that, didn't we? We talked about the
Yeah.
pranksters.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because, again, young men, right?
Yeah,
Young, goofy,
silly
guys.
guys, right? But yeah, there's a certain logic to that. Now that I replay my time at cadet camp, all the unspeakable things that were pranking jokes to some and not to others were all at night.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 a.m.
I think
So
that's
maybe
when...
that does make a logical connection to what goes on in there.
That's their time. And unlike Camosun, I'm sure your barracks, of course, because there were people actually in them, wouldn't have had motion sensors and all those kinds of things.
No.
No. I mean,
Oh
they,
gosh, no.
They were
Right.
glorified shacks, right?
Yeah, to put it mildly, with June bugs everywhere.
Ugh.
Oh, I don't miss those things, and they're quite large. And
They're
they get
huge.
hissing noise.
I know.
When they get scared and they just spread their wings and they try to take some aggressive thing, you're just like, get off my bed. But
I do the
I
same
can't
thing.
tell me how many times in the cot, the cot there it's kind of a cot bed that you sleep in.
Right.
You have to make, but they're always in the bottom under your sheets. So when you start feeling them when you get into bed and they're by your feet, and you're like, oh, geez, really? So you tear the whole blanket back and just swoop them all out. And
No.
they're just, I don't miss those things.
Is anyone a fan of June bugs? We'd love to hear from you if you are. I remember experiencing cicadas for the first time when I went to Texas.
Wow.
Never heard of cicadas. And they are loud and they are big. And you'd go outside and all you'd hear is that hissy, buzzy sound all the time. I wonder if June bugs and cicadas are like related in some way.
I don't know.
Interesting. Ghosts and bears and bugs. But yeah, so going back to the Young Building, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I think you've got a lot of young soldier spirits who are there. There's another story in Victoria's Most Haunted about my friend Tanny's house. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
With the soldier who lived in her apartment? We should tell that story on this show. That would be a good one because we can go to the house.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. I think we got our next episode lined up. Or
Sounds like
an episode.
an episode.
But yeah, I think they're young. I think they're pranksters. I definitely think they're really clear on who owns that place at night. And it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if they messed around with the motion sensors just to get someone in there they could mess with.
You
That
never
wouldn't
know.
surprise me at all. I also heard about the elevator going up and down by itself all the time too. And elevators are usually one of two ways. They're either set up to stay where they're left, or they're set to return to the first floor, or whatever the busy floor is. This elevator apparently just pops up and down all night, like just up and down and up and down and up and down.
Hmm.
I can't imagine how spooky it would be if you're a security guard and you just come up the stairs, and as you do, the elevator right next to you, the door's open,
Ding.
and there's no one there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be fond of that. I didn't ride that elevator.
No, I
just
didn't
walked
either. I didn't
stairs.
either. Yeah. And I don't...
Safer.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not trapped in them.
That's right.
And I don't think I'd be a very good security guard, honestly. I think my imagination or my intuition or my empathy or my feelings would pick up way too much. I think I'd be a mess.
It's been a long time since I've been there. It's inspiring because it makes me want to go back and check that building out again just to see.
Well, I've been there during the day now because of my current job. We go in and recruit volunteers from the criminal justice program,
Mm-hmm.
which is in the Young Building, and it's fine. It's
totally fine.
Yeah, there's something there, but it's also very respectful of you. But it's at night.
Then, yeah.
The switch gets flipped. The other thing was, and I mentioned this in story time, about doing promos for the book. The radio hosts, all of whom had been to Camosun, weirdly enough, all had separate stories. One guy said to me, it's the only ghost story I have. And he was trying to record this piece, and it was midnight or 11 o'clock, and he was recording it with somebody else there, and he thought they were messing with him because he would record his bit, he'd play it back to make sure it was okay,
Mm-hmm.
and he would hear another voice in the background going, and he was getting really angry because he's like, okay, like, you're screwing with me. Like, what are you doing? You've got a mic somewhere. And the other person's like, no. And finally, this person left the room and said, look, I'm out. Like, do your thing. It's not me, and you won't believe me. And it was actually getting kind of heated. So this other person left,
Wow.
and he recorded it again, and the voice was still there.
Wow.
Each time a little bit different. So it wasn't like the same sound coming back.
Mm.
A lot of times they blame it on, there's electrical interference, but they all knew.
Yeah, it's fair.
He also said the CD player used to open and close by itself, especially if he was there at night on the radio station. The CD player would just open up by itself and then close.
It's hard to believe CD players are from the 90s.
I know. CD.
How
We're
did that happen?
We're so old. I told you that story about having the babysitter in when my kid was, I guess it would have been in 2000 because he was born in 97.
Mm.
And the babysitter comes in, and I used to manage a video store back when I was 20. And I had been able to purchase all these movies, and of course they were VHS. And she comes in, and I'm like, we've got movies for you to watch. And she looks up at them, and she's like, oh my God, I love classic movies. And I'm like, as the air was sucked out of my lungs.
Yeah,
This
okay.
horrible human had said all my movies were old. Oh well, it is what it is.
I encountered that recently with the movie Clueless. I can't remember who I was talking to. She was like, oh, that's a classic. I'm like, oh, gosh, really?
1990.
94, 96.
Yeah.
96, maybe 97. I'm pretty sure it's in 96.
It's
but
somewhere in the mid 90s, but she
I
said a
don't think-
classic.
I didn't think of Clueless as a classic. Okay.
Didn't that movie just come out? And the person's like, yeah, 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, we did see Top Gun, so that was amazing.
We saw Top Gun Maverick.
Wow, it's intense.
It's a good movie. I thought they
it was
did a
well
good
worth
job.
the wait, and it definitely it exceeds the original.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you can really see that they wanted to wait and make a good movie.
No
and
doubt.
they did. I think it was a good movie. We're probably going to go see it again.
Yeah, excellent action.
Yes, lots of good action. And if you know anything about Jason, you know action is key.
Yeah, I do like some action. Or White House Down sort of thing.
White House
CIA,
Down,
FBI.
London Has Fallen,
MI6, MI5.
and anything like that. Or martial arts.
Yeah, there's
If people are getting kicked in the head, Jason's there to see it.
Kung Fu Panda. Speaking of bears.
Speaking of
Kung
bears.
Fu Panda.
We did, other sad news, we did sell The Ghosts and Bears mobile.
The FJ.
The FJ Cruiser's gone.
I know that was a tough decision to come to, but realistically, having another rental door makes better sense than having
Yeah,
a fancy Toyota Jeep in the driveway.
Yeah, no, we're selling pretty much everything we can get our hands on to. We're trying to just build a safe retirement. Is what we're trying to do, because we both came to our jobs late.
Comfortable retirement.
So we're not going to have great pensions, so we need to be smart about what we're going to do. So this is a good way to do it. So Jason's been amazing about kind of working out all the numbers, which is good because I struggle with basic multiplication.
That's all I do. Build these Excel spreadsheets, build multiple scenarios, and that's my plan of attack.
The funny part is, so he shows me these spreadsheets, like, look, I'm helping you. I'm showing you the spreadsheet. And I just nod and smile because I don't know what it means.
I just show him the bottom figure and say, I'm adjusting and increasing.
And I'm like, oh,
That's the
okay,
income.
that looks good. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, there's
I know.
There's something. Yeah, I find beauty in the numbers,
which is amazing, and I'm glad you do, because I certainly don't.
Something a lot of people don't.
No, I know.
And that's why there's a lot of people financially in trouble.
It's a gift.
They don't want to see their expenditures.
I understand that. I got around that by just not spending. I would literally just not spend any money, and that way I knew it was always okay. I remember I got my first credit card when I was 20. It was my dad's card. He gave me, but it had my name on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a separate account, but attached to his account. And I would not use that credit card unless I had the money in my bank account to pay off whatever I was going to charge, because I was absolutely petrified of exactly that, falling into that kind of pit. The funny thing was, though, they screwed up one time, and I had paid my bill, and they put it on my dad's card and not on mine. So all of a sudden, they get this phone call saying, you owe $236. And I was like, ah! And because I wasn't the main account holder, I had to phone my dad and be like, I paid it, I swear to God. And he's like, no, you didn't. And then he looked at it and he goes, that's weird, but there's a payment for $236 on my card.
Oh, yeah.
So they worked it out. But
that's fun.
That always scared me. I wasn't happy about that. Speaking of money and struggling and trying to make things work and pay for everything, we are incredibly grateful to our patrons. And we've had 3 new patrons in the last month.
Welcome, and we're super grateful.
We are super grateful to you. So we are going to read off these names. Just to point it out, though, our 3 new ones are Sherry, Brooks, and Marion.
Yeah, Sherry, Brooks, and Marion.
And
thank you very much.
Bless your hearts, because
we're grateful.
You are helping keep the lights on as far as this podcast goes. There is more to it than just slapping it up on the internet. There's quite a bit of expense involved. Yes. We're really grateful, and we're also excited for you, because of course you're going to get your patron merch.
Everyone loves merch.
Everyone loves the merch. So you'll just be getting that.
It gets sent,
which is so cool.
Yeah.
I was going to say, too, if you happen to be some kind of artist type person and you want to do some cool thing with our logo, I would love that, because I'm always looking for different, ways to put our logo out there. I did do one very, very basically on Microsoft Pub, and it's pretty rough, but it works for Pride Month. But if you are someone who's like artistically inclined and you're inspired by something going on, or the logo or whatever, we'd love to share that. So I'm always thrilled by that kind of thing. So if you want to do that, that'd be great. However, we are now going to give our shout outs starting from the top, and because you're new, you get read twice.
Mm-hmm.
Start her up, Jay.
All right. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Brooks.
Thank you, Marion.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Alexa.
Debbie.
Jackie.
Charlotte.
Julie.
Ruth.
Rebecca.
Mary Frances.
Cassie.
Gina and Victoria.
Sandy.
Christopher.
David.
Ashley.
Jeremiah.
Mamer.
Elizabeth.
BB Nix.
Melinda.
Jordan.
Tammy.
James.
Taya.
Our friend Evan.
Yeah. Arwin.
I love you, Arwin. Steve.
Kyle.
And Charlotte.
Yep, and Charlotte. Kyle and Charlotte. Sorry, my mic's in the way.
They're
not moving the screen.
I can't. That's the end of the list. Kyle and Charlotte. Catherine.
And Myri.
Yes, thank you, Myri. And we are so grateful for every single one of you supporting us and helping us out. And we literally couldn't do this without you.
Yeah, it's fun.
It is fun. It's fun to do. It's fun for us, but it is quite a bit of work. I'm actually Okay, I'm publicly stating something for the first time, and Tori might hear this. And Tori is
Tori.
one of my people at Touchwood. I think if she still listens, I think I may need to bump the Calgary book to next October.
Oh.
I know. I haven't even told you that. We're going to get the pictures, and we're going to go do a lot of research in August. So we are going to Calgary in August.
Yeah.
And we're excited for that. But I think the actual research is taking way longer, that I don't think I have enough time to write an entire book
That's all right. Just get
in
it
a few months. Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Right away, sir.
That's like what I do with the money. I just move it around magically.
Well,
Banks
unfortunately,
are like, well, this might take a while. I'm like, no.
No,
It's
no,
gonna
no,
take
no.
me 48 hours.
unfortunately, there's a more creative side to the whole writing thing, so I can't actually just make it happen. But I will give it a whirl.
Copy paste.
Yeah. From the old book.
Yeah.
Just find the young building, insert Calgary Zoo. Click.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's going to work
Just
great.
copy paste.
Copy.
So my accounting is that.
Copy and
Copy
replace.
paste.
Copy, paste, copy, replace.
Oh
I
my
wish.
gosh.
No, I mean, it's really important to me that the books are good and they're personal and
it's
they make
fair.
sense. So I don't want to rush this and have it not be as good as it can.
It's gonna be quite an August running around doing
All the
photos.
pictures and meeting with people, yeah. And I want to say thank you to some people already. There's Melissa out there, Chris, who's one of our patrons, Kyle and Charlotte. You guys have been great sending me material and sending me story ideas. Anybody else out there in the Calgary, Alberta area, if you've got a ghost story, and I mean your house or your farm or your family's farm or whatever, please let me know, because the list is certainly not solidified yet. Once we hit August and we go out and take the pictures, that's going to kind of lock it down.
That's right.
But even with the Vancouver book, it wasn't until sort of the very last minute because you don't know how stories are going to work out. You don't know how good they're going to be. So it is kind of up in the air, and I only want to put in the best stories. So
100%.
yeah, so there you go. There's that going on. Otherwise, what else do we have going on? I'm still doing Ghost Walks Tuesday nights.
Yeah, I got my Army Reserves.
Yay, Army Reserve.
What else?
Still
I guess
working.
we're waiting on the minutes for the strata.
Yeah, we'll find out about that other property. We'll
It's
see
the
what's
only
going
subject
on.
that we'll have to remove.
Yeah.
I think the subject removal is June 9th.
So that's
oh my gosh.
exciting. And that's in a small town of British Columbia again. Honestly, if we tried to do this where we live, or in fact anywhere in the South Island, it just wouldn't happen. There'd be no way.
I'd just go bankrupt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although at this point, it's...
Not only would we sell the
house.
FJ, we'd be walking and we'd be living under a bridge somewhere. That's
I just have to rent this house out. That's the plan anyways.
We'd be renting out Randy and Rex as like movie cats or something. Some kind of
Here's a nice
extras.
cat.
Here's a nice cat. All right, everybody. We want to thank you for sticking with us and listening to the show and just being such a great part of this whole process. And there is one other thing I forgot.
No, what's that?
I got an email a couple weeks ago. We have something here in Victoria, and I think most of Canada, in fact, probably most of North America. There's something called public access. And we have something called Shaw Cable, and Shaw actually has studios and videography equipment and everything else. And I got a very nice email from a gentleman there who said, I've heard your podcast. I think you guys would make a really cool
That would be fun.
TV show.
That'd be
And so
TV
he saw our Halloween episode, I guess.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that we actually did film. Now, as you know, Alex and Chris are our visual content providers.
Yes.
I have, and you have, way too much going on to go, yeah, let's do a TV show. Because we both work full-time as well. Let's not forget. So I basically shot the email to Alex and I said, look, you're the guy who knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know how to do this. You have fantastic ideas. You got a great eye for it. Oh, and you went to school for it.
Yeah,
So this is really up your alley. He works full-time too. So does Chris. We're all busy. But I said, if you have an idea for this and you want to do this, Jason and I will do it.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll just follow your direction.
We'll just show up like monkeys.
Exactly. Just
Flap our gums.
boss us around. So Alex came back and he said, oh, I've got some great ideas. And he bounced a couple ideas off us right away, and they are actually pretty brilliant.
It's all good.
It's all good. So
Stay tuned, literally.
You literally...
Potential TV.
Shaw TV said we can use anything we produce. We can use on our own website,
That's
on YouTube, on social media. So you may actually be soon seeing a few episodes of Ghosts and Bears
Live.
on TV. Well, it won't be live. It'll be heavily edited.
Yeah, no one wants to see us.
No one wants to see us.
Just have a ghost in front of my face. Some really poorly done edit.
So we'll see what happens with that.
Make it look like it's like done by a 2-year-old on an iPhone.
Well, not if Alex is doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
If I did it, it would look like a 2-year-old did it on an iPhone.
There's some Instagram thing.
Instagram
like
filters,
like
so we look like dogs.
That like cat or
Yeah.
dog are in that law thing.
Oh my god, I love that clip. I'm obviously not a cat.
I'm a real human.
I'm a real human. So that's kind of exciting. So we wanted to share that with you. I don't know what's going to happen with it. It may, whatever, but it's kind of fun that the possibility is even there. So
That's
that's
a magical statement. If it happens to happen, it happens.
which is a very good statement to let go of a lot of stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for experiencing the Young Building with us. If you are in Victoria, I'm sure you could probably swing by there and take a walk around.
It is.
It's a powerful
creepy
place.
And I thought about it as you were talking. In the military, there is a point of lights out. And that's usually when all the pranks happen, is the first 30, 45 minutes of that lights out.
Yeah, like summer camp.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's part of what it was. Maybe the lights out was 9 p.m. or something.
And maybe they're just, as far as they're concerned, lights out is when it gets dark.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Well, thanks for listening, all y'all.
And thank you so much, and we're so grateful to have you. And remember, when you're looking for a podcast or you're sitting around talking with your friends, hey, you guys know any cool podcasts? You'd be like, yeah, I know a podcast. It's got the actual ghost stories.
With the actual history.
In the actual place. And hopefully, soon, that place
will be with you.
Right with you, right beside you, maybe in your home, and you'll be like, how did you get in here? Get out.
Traveling soon.
Yes,
gracious.
Definitely. As soon as we get a car, we can travel in.
We have one now.
I know, we'll be fine. Thanks, you guys. Have a wonderful next couple of weeks. And if you're a patron, next week we've got another Ghost Stories We Have Heard episode coming out for you. And otherwise,
it's on the road, as always.
As
Our
always.
new format is we're on the road, heading to who knows where.
Who knows where. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful time. And thanks for listening. And we'll be talking to you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.